Hey everyone, this is Nate and this is the Nader Tater channel. Alright, in this video series I'm going to cover this new security camera setup from Eufy Security, and they just came out with this professional lineup, and this is the E330 camera. So these cameras are hardwired with power all the time. They do 24/7 recording, but they use a wireless technology to actually get the video footage back to their home base, which you can see here on this box here. And so these three boxes are three different kits that you can buy. One of them has 4 cameras, one has 2 cameras, and one is just a single camera. Now what I'm going to do to make the videos shorter is I'm going to break them out into 3 different videos. One of them is going to cover the unboxing and kind of what all these cameras are about, why you might want them, why you might not want them. And then another video will be the installation and going through all the settings. They have lots of different settings and things that you need to know about to set it up properly for your house. And the last one is actually going to go through what I have experienced with it after several weeks of testing with myself, delivery people, and all the different pros and cons that I found actually by living with it here at my house with all 7 cameras set up over time. So that's how I'm going to break out the videos. You can see the video description down below. I will have a link to all of them so that you can check them all out, whichever one is the most interest to you. Alright, so in this video I will cover the installation of me putting on the house very briefly, but most importantly really going through everything I learned from the installation, as well as all the different settings that you have in the app and things I mess with to get the best performance for my specific setup. All right, so installing them outside is pretty easy. I got them all placed out where I wanted them, and of course, you know, right now I actually have some of them kind of temporary to figure out if is it really the right location where I want it, or do I want to move them or rearrange them a little bit. The attachment, to be honest with you, it's not my favorite one that they have. My favorite one is the one that gives you kind of like a ball that lets you move it around in every direction. This one at first glance only allows you to go up and down with it, but I did find a way that you can go left and right. It did require looking at these little side screws and having a small screwdriver bit that loosens this up. And so what you would do is, instead of placing the camera directly on a wall where it can only go up and down, you would rotate it so that it, for example, can go left and right instead. And now, of course, if you did that and you attached it, your camera would be sideways. So now you need to get your camera to be rotated. So to do that, you loosen the one that's closer to the camera, not the one on the base. The base one actually appears to be keyed where it doesn't let you rotate it, but you can loosen this one up just slightly. And you do have to remember there is a cord that runs in through here, so you don't want to take this and just rotate it around and around, because you actually twist the cord that's inside there. Once you loosen it up, now you can take this camera and just rotate it so that it's at the angle that you want it to, and now you have a camera that is, instead of looking up down, is actually looking to the left or right. Or you could do any kind of angle in between. If you wanted it like down and to the left, you would just have this mounted at that angle and then fix this so that it's at the correct position. So the trick to this is you kind of have to get an idea of how you want that to be mounted before you screw the plate to the wall, because once you do that, that kind of determines what angle you can get out of this only single degree of freedom hinge here. So that's the only hard part I would say about the routing. The rest of it's pretty easy from a standpoint of the routing the cable. That's what you have to figure out on your own, obviously, is where's the best way to route it. For me, sometimes I just drilled a hole through the soffit, like underneath the roof. I use actually a 7/16 inch drill bit, which gives you just enough room to get the large end through. And then you could go slightly bigger if you needed a little bit more wiggle room, but 7/16 is all I needed to get through that. And then they include the little attachments that do help with securing the cable along the wall or up underneath the roof or whatnot for that. So that's how I installed them, and that was the only trick really. The other part of the system that you have to keep in mind is the home base and where does that go. So the home base itself is both Ethernet and power, and then it does actually have Wi-Fi, but you have to actually follow a couple steps once you have it plugged in to have it connect to the Wi-Fi, and then it will back up or it will switch over to Wi-Fi if there's no Ethernet connection. So to me, that's an important step to do. is have it Wi-Fi, because then what I did, once I had it Wi-Fi, I placed this in the center of my house so that I could get signal all the way around. But I know that I actually don't want to keep this in the center of my house. I want to keep it in like an office or some other place. So I just did that so that I could get them set up, because you do need to have access to this. But then what we'll do here in the next is actually tell the cameras to connect to my home Wi-Fi if they don't have a good signal to the home base. So it's kind of the same thing we just told the home base to do, is connect to Wi-Fi if it doesn't have Ethernet, and we'll set that up as well. Now, there were actually a couple tricks I used for the installation. For some of them, I actually found that I can take a splitter that allows me to power 2 cameras up. And I'm sure this is not recommended, but I actually used their included power adapter for 1 camera and split it, and it powers both cameras just fine. Now, I don't have the spotlight active, but I have been using it like that, where it's powering 2 cameras, and I haven't had any problems with it yet. So the other option, of course, you can buy a stronger 12-volt output AC wall adapter. So that's something that you can get as well. And then I also actually powered one of these cameras up with a power over Ethernet line. So for some of my wireless mesh systems, they do use power over Ethernet. And now, in general, obviously these cameras are not trying to compete with a PoE camera setup, but this one is one of the places where I was putting it. It made a lot of sense. I could use an existing power over Ethernet line to power the unit. And so that is what I actually did. I got one of these adapters here that takes the PoE input, and then it splits it into a correct round plug for the camera, and it drops it down to 12 volts. So I'll put a link to that in the video description if you want that. This works great. I just take a PoE, it's like a 48 volts or something, into it, and then it converts it to 12 volts and gives you the plug that goes directly into the camera and powers it. And as part of that, I actually got a PoE extender because I only had 1 Ethernet line ran. And this actually takes that Ethernet and it splits it into 2, so that one now goes to this guy in the camera. My other side goes to one of my access points up there. This is in the attic where there's not easy access to 110-volt power. So it really worked well for me in that situation. So I'll include a link to that as well if that's something that you want to do and install. Okay, so here is my Eufy screen. Now, what you can see is the top left one, this Building 2 Pro, is offline, and that's because I have it in here to show it to you. But then the other ones you can see, I called all my Pro cams the last part of their name Pro, so it's really the top few ones there. And that's how I have them set up around the outside of my house, one inside the garage, and then you'll see I have lots of other Eufy cams as well down below, but for this one, we're going to focus just on these Pro cameras. So what I want to do now is actually go to my HomeBase settings, because I want to be able to tell my cameras to actually connect to my Wi-Fi and not just the HomeBase connection. This will allow me more flexibility with where I put the HomeBase, because I just barely get a good enough signal throughout the whole perimeter of my house if I put the HomeBase in the middle of it. It's a 2,500 square foot footprint for the house, but then there's an attached garage that goes off of that as well, and I have one of the cameras out on the far side of the garage. So, they say 82 feet is the maximum. That's probably about right in the ideal conditions. So for me, this HomeBase does actually connect to everything with it in the center of the house, but I want to be able to move it. So let's go in here to the HomeBase settings. All right, so now we're in the HomeBase settings. You can see it shows that there's 7 cameras hooked up to it, and it's showing you that I'm starting to use some of the data management. I haven't even started talking about or showing up the face management and AI, artificial intelligence, but let's just go into the settings and look at this multi-bridge function. So this is multi-bridge beta. Now I'm gonna kind of do it improperly because it tells me I should have the camera hooked up. Not sure what will happen if I don't have the camera hooked up, but we're gonna go ahead and do next. This is my first time doing this with the cameras. And sorry, this is not the HomeBase that's actually connected to the cameras. Obviously, it's unplugged here. So the HomeBase that has the hard drive in it is upstairs and connected. All right, so now it's telling me to verify that all cameras are hooked up. They're not, but I'm going to click next anyways and just see what happens. Okay, so it picked up that the Building 2 is not connected. I'm going to say that's fine. This is where I'm going to tell it what is my home Wi-Fi to connect to. All right, so it has a little check mark there to make sure that you're sure that the Wi-Fi password is correct. So I did double check that, and you can hit the little eye icon up there if you want to make sure you can read it instead of just the dots. All right, so I did actually end up plugging this one in just to make sure. So as it was starting and going kind of slow, I plugged it in just so it could connect. It did take several minutes for it to go through and get to 100%, but now it says it's optimized. So let's see what it shows. It does show the building 2 is on there now. So this is interesting. So what it's showing me here is on the right side of my screen that there are 4 cameras: the basement, the front walkway, the deck pro, and building 2 are on the HomeBase directly. But then it has the backyard, the garage pro, and the circle pro. So both the garage pro and circle pro are close to each other. They're in the attached garage on the far wall. So like I said, that's kind of far away. And then the backyard one is on the other side, 180 degrees from that on the other side of the house, far away as well. So it kind of makes sense those are on the fringe elements. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my home base to where I want it. And let's see what it does. I'm not sure if it will automatically switch these around or if I have to try to run this setup again to get them to connect to the best connection. So this is kind of cool. So I can just drag an icon and switch the connection. So I can just go from like here and drag it over. That's kind of nice. Okay, so it re-optimized, a little like it through building 2 on the Wi-Fi network this time. That's fine, but I can drag and drop these around. I'm hoping now that they're all connected to my Wi-Fi, I want to see if I can bring them actually way far away from the home base. But since I have a Wi-Fi mesh setup across like 5 acres on my property with multiple buildings where I have Ethernet run to buildings, I wonder if I can get the camera to work in a separate building using my home Wi-Fi instead of the HomeBase wireless. So we'll leave this as it is now. All right, so we want to look in a few of the other settings for the HomeBase itself. We can click audio settings. This is just for alarm. It can send off alarm sound from this HomeBase itself, as well as when it talks to you, it can, has a volume control there. So that is actually, it can be, I think this can actually be like a home chime. So if you have a doorbell, you can have this actually be the noisemaker for the doorbell ring. Notification, here's where you can change what type of push notifications you get as far as if you switch the schedule. You can have geofencing so that it only arms the cameras or the notifications when you leave your house, and when you're home you don't get them, all that kind of stuff. They have keypads, obviously the app, and you can also have the Eufy alarm, and they have a delay in here for that as well. Multi-bridge we just did. For general settings here, you can change the name, the connection of Wi-Fi versus Ethernet. This is what I showed you before, where you can actually tell the HomeBase to connect to Wi-Fi instead of Ethernet. They're always going to want you to prefer Ethernet, especially if you don't have the best Wi-Fi setup. I have a small business grade one, so I'm not concerned about the extra throughput when I'm connecting through my app. I'm actually connecting through Wi-Fi to my HomeBase upstairs. Working mode, I don't know what this really means. The performance one is in beta testing, but it says it's better, so I'm like, yep, let's do that, and that's by default anyways on. Time settings here, you can pick the time and the format as well as your time zone if it's not correct. And then about device just gives you your firmware information, your serial number, and that kind of stuff. Okay, and there's one more thing here, and that's this face management. I took a picture of me down here and added it as my name, but now you can add more faces. And so you can manually add them in here, or if you go to the camera and look at the footage, it collects the faces, and then you can add names and classify those folks during it. Now the AI empowerment, I obviously want to empower them to do this, so I'm going to click empower. This is going to help them detect objects like vehicles, humans, and pets. I think that's what this is all about, as well as faces. So these are all empowered. I have them all checked. So that means all my cameras are going to use the AI that's built into the HomeBase, as well as some of the AI is built into the cameras. Now the HomeBase is what has like the facial recognition and some more advanced ones, but the camera has AI built into it as well. All right, so if I'm going to pick like this Circle Pro in the top right, if I hit just the play icon, it's going to load this up to play the live view of right now. Now you can obviously turn your tablet sideways All right, now unfortunately, I think the tablet stops the recording, the screen recording, but so I just took a snapshot of what it's showing. And then the bottom there, you can see you hit record. If you hit record, that's going to record it to your device that you're looking on. So like in this case, my tablet is going to record actually to the tablet itself. So this is separate than the camera recording or the HomeBase recording. So if you hit the screenshot one, that's going to save a picture of whatever is on the video right then onto your device, like your phone or your tablet. You can press and hold the microphone button. That will give you speaking access, so they'll play the sound out in the camera itself. If you let go of that, by default, it's going to always be listening or hearing the sound from the camera and playing that on your device here, your tablet, your phone. Sound, you can turn that on and off here. You can go to playback. So if you swipe from the right to the left, on the bottom there's a light button, so you can toggle the little LED light on and off. Then you can also toggle on the black and white night vision. So if you do black and white, that means that light will not kick on. It just uses infrared at night. Or you can have it color night vision, which just means the light will turn on at nighttime if it detects motion. And then there's a event button. The event will bring you to the recordings for that camera to show you all the events that it had over the past day or whatever. And then the top, you have a alarm, so you can have a siren go off. And there's also a gear icon, which is the settings. All right, the other way to get to the settings is instead of hitting the play button, on the bottom of that, you can see a couple things. One, bottom left is the Wi-Fi signal. So the signal there you can see is full. Then you have that playback. So that's a playback, the go back and look at all the footage. The next box is that says 0 in it, just means that there are 0 events detected since the last time I looked at it. And then the 3 dots gives you the option to either snooze or to go into the settings. So like the snooze will allow me to snooze the camera. It doesn't stop the recordings, it just stops the notification to this device. So you can snooze it from 30 minutes to 12 hours. All right, so if we go into the settings on the camera itself here, the one thing I did set up is cross camera tracking. This one is pretty neat because this allows you much easier view of if someone were to come to your house or vehicle and it drives or walks around multiple places. This is going to keep it all as one event that you can watch at, even if it's on multiple cameras. So I turned that on, and then I went into the devices and I select all of them to be active. If you don't want them all to do it, then you can uncheck some of them. And then you can change the continuous tracking time. So this means how long it takes them to get from one camera to the next, and it still calls it one event versus saving it as another event. So by default, it's 2 minutes, but you can go as long as 30 minutes between when it detects people. So that's kind of up to you. Something like 5 minutes kind of seems like a good number to me. And then there's a tracking assistance one. It looks like they're trying to just help detect the same person and for you to keep track of it. You can also create a camera tracking group. So that's the next one down. If I click on that, what this says is like, hey, you can kind of help out the AI by saying these 3 cameras, for example, are all in the front of the house. And they should be a group because that means that it's very likely that a person would walk or drive from one field of view to the next field of view. So I haven't set that up, but I think that could make sense. I might mess with that in the future. All right, next is motion detection. So by default, I think it has the human detection. I added the vehicle and the pet detection. But what I really like about the 24/7 cameras is I'm not going to do all other motion. Before I did that, just in case it didn't detect a person as a person, or I wanted some of my wildlife, like a turkey, and if it doesn't detect it as a pet, then I still wanted to record it. So this time, by default, those cameras are always recording 24/7. So this really just helps me narrow down when I get notified of something. So obviously you want to have motion detection on the top, but then the next thing is the activity zone. All right, so then this has a plus icon on the bottom that allows you to add like an octagon, and then you can drag and shape that that shape around into different shapes. It's not completely random because you kind of have like 8 points to mess with, but you can add up to 3 areas that it's going to use to detect motion. So you can keep, you can crop a street out or a neighbor's house or whatever else out of that activity field that it will detect the motion. All right, recording settings here. This is where you can adjust the clip length. Now, I can see arguments for a couple different ways. One, you could say make it shorter because you always have the backup 24/7 recording in addition to this event recording. or you can make it longer. Default 60 seconds. I like 120 seconds. This means when it detects motion, it's going to record that as a single clip for 2 minutes, but it will stop that event recording if the motion stops. And then additionally, like I said, you always have the 24/7 backup footage as well. All right, night vision. This just determines if it uses infrared light at night or if it's using a little spotlight. For this one, since the spotlight's not super bright, I'm going to let it just stay black and white for infrared, but I might change that in the future if I want to. All right, privacy zones. This lets you set up some zones on the camera field of view that are always blacked out. So they're only recorded as a black blob and it's never actually the content. So you might need this if your camera is pointing at perhaps a neighbor's property or some other place that you don't want the recording to capture. So that will always be blacked out. Rotate image 180, that's obviously if the camera is upside down based on how you had to mount it, it'll flip that right side up. Flicker adjustment, this would be if it's, basically the 50 hertz or 60 hertz power frequency that some different countries have. All right, so the audio settings, this just has the microphone toggle on or off. I always leave them on, but you can also disable the audio recording so that it doesn't record sound at all. And then same thing for the speaker, for you talking from your phone to the camera, you can have that either active or not active. And the same thing for adjusting the volume. So I'm probably going to make it high because it's outside, it's up high, it's probably hard to hear. So we'll leave it as loud as possible. Okay, next is notification. This is another important one, I think, for a lot of these cameras. Is the most efficient is one that just gives you a text. It doesn't give you any thumbnail of what it saw. So, I mean, that's helpful, but I really want a thumbnail. The problem is that Eufy did get some bad press because that they talk about they are very local based, no subscriptions required, you get all local storage, but that thumbnail image does go to the cloud. And so they do call that out here that, hey, if you select one of these other ones, your thumbnail is going to go to the cloud and be stored temporarily and then deleted. But so for this one, I do like doing the full effect, and that's where you get the text notification right away, and then it follows back up with a thumbnail shortly thereafter. So that's how I like to have mine, but just know that that thumbnail is technically out there on the internet. All right, next is the general tab, and the general just has the name, the status LED that you can see, like this one is probably blue on there. You might like that, or you might say, hey, I want that light on. So that's that status LED. Here's a mounting guide and about device that'll tell you firmware, serial number, that kind of stuff. All right, one of the other ones I want to mention here is the share device. So the share device gives you the ability to share the camera with someone specific. It only gives them access to that specific camera. And so you can control it and not give them access to all of your Eufy system. And it can also limit their ability as far as what they can do with any type of settings. And then lastly on the cameras, you have the restart and the remove device. So those might be helpful to restart if something's acting up or whatever. You could restart it from the app as well. So those are kind of the settings. Let's do some testing with it and see how it performs.